Hey everybody, Alex Miller at Capnion here, home of Ghost PII. In a second, I'm going to talk about something I saw in the news about ChatGPT reading the minutes of the Federal Reserve Bank and predicting stock movements. And I have a good sense that I'd like to share with you. This is not ever going to be what it appears. It's a great headline, which is why it was a headline in the newspaper. But it's not going to be what it appears. And then there's a very direct story you can tell based on this about there's not going to be a job apocalypse quite how you think. And I think that's an important story to tell, given that a lot of people out there seem frightened. But first, I'm going to talk about why I care, because generative AI is not my thing. And like a lot of people out there, I'm not going to repurpose myself overnight. Except maybe I hope I'm succeeding in moderating expectations for somebody out there. The way I tell the story, the only way I survived the lockdown phase of pandemic was I watched this trashy old movie I had on DVD over and over again. I don't know why that worked for me, but it worked for me. This movie is Beer Fest. It's a very trashy comedy. It came out in 2006. And I think there's a lot in it for such kind of trashy, lighthearted comedy that's strangely prophetic. So there's a minor character in the film. Fans of the film will know about Antonio. Antonio is a junkie. And only if you're a diehard fan of this film do you know that Antonio, the actor that played Antonio, was one of these QAnon suicides. People came to believe things that were so nightmarish. I don't really blame them for taking their old life. The world is run by cannibal, pedophile, Satanists, whatever this story is. And so this really affects me because the climate of information these days is really hurting people. And, I get up every day trying to slow that merry-go-round and not spin it fast. That is a moral calling for me. I'm never going to feel any different. I'm always going to think about Antonio, we miss you. And I think we're kind of on the cusp of all of the trends that took the world to that evil place. We want to do them faster and faster and more carelessly in a way. And, like my modest thing I'm going to say in the second half of this video is I don't even think it's going to work. Like, I don't even think the world's really going to change how people think. It's just going to turn into a world where humans eat information trash fed to them by robots that are maybe increasingly dumb. Maybe you've seen some of my other videos about model drift, but a really important idea I'd like to get across here is, well, if you build a machine learning model on your laptop, you can analyze it in totally machine learning theoretic terms. If something becomes a super famous megawatt hit and that technology goes everywhere, now you have to analyze it in a way that's contextualized via a lot of other institutions. And when you do this with ChatGPT, it's going to be a dumpster fire. Okay, so I promised something about the Federal Reserve here. The headline is ChatGPT can read Fed movements and predict stock prices. So that's great. That's cool. I'm not saying that's not cool, and I'm not saying it's not worth using ChatGPT for that. Bullet point 0, lots of people can already do this. This information is available. Why did anybody care? Well, maybe you'd like to play the stock market, but then it's already true that people analyze those minutes in real time. And ChatGPT, if we get down to microseconds, this kind of ChatGPT-like technology, do you have a rail to play the stock market at microsecond speed? No, you don't. It's going to just be the same game where the people that do have that rail, it just goes wherever they think it's going to go. And it doesn't really matter for everyday people. And in a way, it doesn't even matter for those firms doing high-speed trading. But let's go a little deeper. Let's just imagine that ChatGPT was better at it than any other human could be. It basically becomes true because the stock market is a competitive game that's heavily about expectations and belief in the short term. If ChatGPT was that good, whatever ChatGPT says about the stock market is almost true by tautology. Everybody believes that's where the stock market should be. It will be there. And then this goes back to the model drift idea I've articulated elsewhere. Well, where is the training data to maintain ChatGPT down the road if ChatGPT is now deciding where the stock market could go? That's the kind of thing that appears to be very stable, but will turn out to have deep and destructive instability in it. And just to recap, you can imagine these worlds where maybe ChatGPT or generative AI, large language models in general, Google Bard, whatever you want, they are these effortless geniuses that know everything, but that will undermine the systems around them in a way that the impact is actually kind of who cares. All right, job market. Let's say you do a good job with what everybody's shouting you about, and you get really good at using ChatGPT for your job. A lot of other people are going to do that too because we're all on LinkedIn shouting at each other to do it. I am not saying that's a bad idea. It might be a good idea, but you're not done because now your work looks exactly like a zillion other people's work. And there's a construct I really like, and I think there's really a deep insight about human cognition in it. You really need a beauty mark on your resume, on your life, on your personality. If you look exactly the same as everybody else, that's really tough sledding applying for a job because there's nothing in you, on you, about you for anybody's imagination to latch onto. Once again, you're trying to compete with a robot by becoming a robot, and the robot's always going to be a better robot than you. So the next step is, okay, you're great at prompt engineering, whatever that means. We just made it up in the past few weeks. What else you got? Like a lot of people can feed stuff into a chatbot on the internet. What else you got? The what else you got becomes, well, that's really what gets you a job. And that's actually the world we live in today. So maybe, and I just also this thing of losing all these jobs. Is the CEO of Microsoft just gonna feed stuff into ChatGPT himself all day, or does he need a lot of people to do it? So there's still going to be jobs. Maybe they involve feeding stuff into some large language model, but really how you get those jobs is not feeding stuff into a large language model. You get ahead on the margin, and being hired for a job is a getting ahead on the margin type moment. You get ahead on the margin by having something different and something else, and I bet you that different and something else thing is going to be an old-timey grandfather thing that you're already doing today. So don't forget about whatever you feel like is your value today to be a large language model junkie, because that's not how it's going to work. There's a lot, in a way, learn to use these things, but past that, ignore the hype is what I'm saying, because jobs aren't disappearing. There's going to be a lot of the same layers on all the jobs that are on them now. And, once again, the hype isn't going to be real. Exactly, because if it's real, it's going to undermine social institutions that support it functioning correctly. And I would say this already happened with social media and Google, as I'm going to keep repeating. If the past looks anything like the future, it's not going to be as shiny or as apocalyptic as a lot of people are saying.